This is Don't Get Me Started. This is a conversation about advertising. And here is your host, freelance creative director and creative circus department head, Dan Balser.
Yes, welcome back to another episode of the podcast. Almost 13 years and running, and thank you so much for listening. Make sure that you follow this podcast on Facebook, which is DGMS Podcast, and Instagram, DGMS Podcast. And if I wonder if the music's over yet. If this is still over the music, it's DGMS Podcast on social media. Kevin Green is here today, and I know you've listened to a lot of these. You know that these people come out of this talk, and you weren't there, most of you, to hear it. And I will often say that we go way back like an hour. I've known Kevin for about an hour now. But I got to say, just personally, it's such a privilege and such an honor to not only get to meet all these fascinating, interesting, wise, creative people, but for me to have the opportunity to sit in this little crappy, stinky room and have these conversations.
Lovely room.
I just appreciate the opportunity, and I appreciate the fact that you are on the other end listening to these conversations as you go for your walk, feed your dog, go on the treadmill, or try to do the layouts that you're supposed to work on for tomorrow. So thank you so much for all that. And let me know how we're doing. You can send me an email at danspodcast@mac.com, as always. So Kevin is a creative director at Rapp in Dallas. He's also an advisory board member at AdColor. He was at Rapp, left to go work at Match for a little while, and now he's back at Rapp as a young creative director, overseeing a group of about 10 on clients that include Toyota, McDonald's, PNC Bank. I would say also has taken by the reins and internalized the value of diversity in our business, which is hats off to all who do so by being a board member at AdColor, because I think he's going to want to share this story. I think owes his career to the Marcus Graham Project of training leadership and enabling young African American creatives to not only have a career but make a difference in the business. And it's just a wonderful experience to be able to see and hear from and meet Kevin. And I can't even say it enough. Welcome to the Creative Circus, and thank you so much for coming down.
Thanks for having me. Honored to be here. Yeah.
How's your day been so far?
It's been good. I've been talking a lot. Like, I talk every day in meetings and stuff like that. But I've met a bunch of students today, really just blown away by the quality of the students that you have here. The thoughtfulness in their work kind of made me a little jealous that I wasn't that dope when I was that age. And so I did that. Also just spoke to the group at the Friday Forum and just really tried to empower them and leave them with like a toolkit of soft skills that they can take when they get in the industry that help them sort of interpret all of the shit that happens in this industry in a positive way, and so that they don't drive themselves crazy. I think I told one person I talked to afterwards, like, I want to be like that voice in the back of your head when you encounter stress or opposition or resistance that allows you to interpret that struggle in a positive manner. And so I spoke a lot about that. I spoke a lot about taking feedback, owning your power as a young person, but not establishing your identity solely on your age, because you're not always going to be the young person. You're going to get older, and you have to figure out who are you as a creative outside of being the young, hot, flashy creative, and not when you get older, not relying on age either. So I spoke a lot about that, and just really I want to empower young people with the things that we don't get to hear when we're young, right? You don't get told how to interpret feedback in a positive way when you're young. You just get feedback, right? You don't,
right.
Yeah, you don't get, no one tells you, you don't have to stay at this company for your whole career. You can, if this company stops feeding your creativity, leave. No one tells you that as a young person. And so that's what I try to do. I want to give young talent a peek into what the other side is like. And when I say the other side, I mean leadership, and how leaders interpret things, and how leaders deal with stress and opposition and resistance. So I just tried to, leave them with something they could use.
That requires a little bit of self-awareness and also empathy for leadership. I mean, I think that's a fundamental skill that can be learned, that I think I was never taught to think. Well, think about the other side of this equation, the creative director relationship, right?
Yeah.
So you mentioned that. So for the listeners who weren't there, so Kevin went through this list of 20 sort of bits of advice. We're not going to go through this list for sure in order, But number 5 you just touched, which is like establish an identity beyond your age. You're not just a young person.
Right.
Are you talking to yourself?
Yeah, I'm talking to myself because, for me, my age has never been, it's been an asset, but it's not solely who I am. And so I've benefited from the fact that if you look at me, I've always looked older.
See, but you weren't typecast as a young person.
I was not typecast as a young person. And so I had privilege in that sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
I had this idea that, and my demeanor is calm also. Right. So when I'm in a room, one, I look about, 5 to 10 years older than I am. I had my first week at my first internship at Rapp way back in 2010. One of my colleagues told me that, dude, when you first walked in the meeting, I thought you were like an ACD, right, and I thought you were like 30, and I was 22. And so I've had the privilege of looking older. But then
there will be a tipping point, though.
There will be
when you look young.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm waiting for that. Waiting for that. And so I've had that privilege, but then also I'm just a naturally calm person. I think I get it from my grandfather and my father, who are just like even keel guys and people that I look up to. And
seriously,
yeah,
like you feel that way. Like you can take stuff. You can take punches.
I can. That's my greatest asset, and what allows people to follow me is because even if you're older than me, I have people who report to me who are a little bit older than me, but who, when under stress, tend to like freak out a little bit.
Right, yeah.
And I'm sort of like steady and calm, like, okay, this sucks, but here's what we're going to do. And so
it's really valuable.
Yeah, that has been one of my greatest assets, but I could have just coasted on that privilege. But what I want to impart to students and younger people in the industry is that your age can't be your identity. Not everyone's going to look 5 years older than they actually are, like I do, or not everyone's naturally calm. And so what you want to, what you want to do is have an identity that's based in who you are as a creative and who you are as a craftsperson in this industry, because you're not going to always be the young person. There will come an age where everyone at the agency will be younger than you, or you'll be the junior 1 year, and then the new hot intern comes in and takes your young person spot. So who are you beyond that? Who are you beyond your age?
And that's important for you to see that in a portfolio, you think?
No, I think it's more once you get the job.
How you frame
it's
yourself.
More how you frame yourself and how you brand yourself. When I get a student book, I want to see some youthful energy, because that's where like the good ideas are going to come from. But once you get there, you can't stake your reputation on, oh, I'm the young guy who's going to come in and be flashy and exciting and all that kind of stuff. You want to be exciting and you want to bring new ideas. But there's going to come a year where youth will not be on your side. There will be people younger than you who are doing what you once did. Conversely, when you get older, you can't expect to get certain things because you're a certain age, right? When you turn 40, you shouldn't expect yourself to be a group creative director just because you're 40. You need to be good. Right. And you need to be good when you're young, and you need to be good when you're middle age, you need to be good when you're older. It all contributes to your career, right? And so you want to have that identity beyond your age and not expect things to happen because you are a certain age. You need to be in pursuit of truth as a creative, and in pursuit of the best ideas. If you chase that and use that as your metric rather than your age, and this even goes for promotions and stuff like that. Oh, well, I'm 25. I should probably be a mid-level copywriter. Oh, I'm 27. I should probably be a senior copywriter. When are you actually doing the work that position entails? Maybe not. And so if we use age as our only barometer, one, you wouldn't have people like me who, not being arrogant or anything. I deserve to be in leadership. I deserve to lead people. And it's something that I know I'm good at. But if I had only thought at the level of my age, I would probably be a solid senior copywriter right now. You know what I'm saying? So if don't use age as your barometer, put your energy and effort into the work, and don't feel entitled to anything because and as a young person, don't feel entitled to being the young hot person. I want to be young and hot when I'm 35, when I'm 45. That it's more of a mentality than an age. And I think our industry is super ageist, honestly.
You think?
I think we are super ageist.
I'm being sarcastic.
Yeah, I picked up on that. You're really only valuable, quote unquote, valuable to this industry from 25 to 40. Because once from 22 to 25, you're too young. You don't know what you're talking about. When you're 45 plus, ooh, man, he's old. Why hasn't he been promoted past this certain point? And so our industry is ageist, and I think it is a huge distraction and honestly like a huge problem within our industry, that we just don't look at people for who they are and what they bring to the table and get this sort of notion of age off the table. Like you can be 50 and reinvent yourself. You can be 45 and reinvent yourself.
Mhm.
Why not? And I think age is a huge thing that when I try to tell young people, and I basically give them insights they're not ready for. Like a lot of stuff I told the students today, they won't use it for another 5 years, but I want them to see what people who have been in the industry longer than them are facing, so they can be prepared for it and start to look at their problems
No
through
question.
the lens of what the future holds.
There's no question at all. That's absolutely right. So,
Hmm.
do you think that you always sort of your sort of truth about the way you think about
Hmm.
creativity or whatever? Did you think that you kind of always had a percentage of your approach was through a creative director sensibility? Like, were you always kind of a creative director waiting to sort of grow or blossom?
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, I've always been kind of the old soul in the room, and I think what that's afforded me is I've always thought and always been really connected to leadership at my company. So
Right.
even as an intern, I worked with an ACD, CD, and CD who I developed really close relationships with, and I don't know, from the beginning, I've always thought like I need to pick these people's brains and not necessarily be afraid of them. I think when you get into as a young person, you get into a company, there's this sort of natural fear with the big wigs, right? Oh man, here's this creative director, this title that I've always wanted, and so I need to be subservient to them. But for me, there was always a curiosity that I had with these people, like how do you do this? How do you just walk into a room you hadn't seen any other work, but you can talk to it? You just come up with ideas so quickly. Like, how do you do that? And so I think that sort of innate curiosity has helped me. And then for my actual work, I think what has helped me is when I sit down to approach a problem, and this is what the Marcus Graham Project taught me, um, is to really like think like a strategist when I'm solving problems. And what I've learned from being a creative director is I'm connected to the strategy just as much as I'm
Oh
connected
God,
to the
yes,
art and copy.
for sure.
And so I've been thinking that way since I was 22.
Hmm.
And that's what the Marcus Graham Project did for me, in addition to putting me into an environment where um, I just had to do a lot outside of my job title. I was making layouts as a copywriter intern. I was helping brand managers think through issues as an intern, and so I wasn't pigeonholed necessarily.
Hmm.
So, and at the time, I had no idea what was being built inside of me, but what was being built was sort of a window into all the other aspects of our industry, coupled with the curiosity to ask people like, how did this happen? Like, how do you approach this every day? Those two things have really had it innate within me. I mean, since I was 24, 25, and it's carried with me and is only growing and developing to the point to where I can be a young-ish person. I'm 31. I turned 32 this year. To where I can speak authoritatively, but I still relate to people who are still in school, because like he's
That's
older, but like he's not that much
well,
older. So
I hope I can relate. I mean, I'm clearly visually, clearly chronologically much older, but I tried very, very hard not to be of my age, but of my time. I think it's an active thing that anyone.
absolutely.
And I had a student one time that was talking about something. I don't even know how it came up, and I said
Hmm.
to her something about your generation's all keyed in or whatever, and she said to me, she said, "Well, I'm not all internety like you." So just because you're young doesn't give you a free pass either.
Right,
Like, I mean,
right.
part of being, culturally aware or articulate and creative is that's your job. I mean,
Yeah, literally. That's our job.
somehow we're talking about LeBron in class the other day because we talk about everything but advertising in my class. And somebody, I don't remember who it was, basically went through and told us like the work that this man does and he even referred to the season. I'm sorry, the off season is his season
Yeah.
because it's all about the work that you put in to prepare and that's kind of, I think that's something that I'm not sure that I was taught that. I think when you're young, it's osmosis because you have so much free time. You don't have a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old.
Right.
You're absorbing culture because you live in culture.
Yeah.
But then it becomes sort of your job, but not in a shitty way, like, oh, I have to do this, but like you just have to make sure it's on your plate every day.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing about this whole conversation for me is that, and I'm sure you're starting to see this, that like everybody kind of has their own DNA. Like everybody has their strengths, and just because this worked for you, not everybody can be a creative director. Not everybody wants to be a creative director. Yeah. So part of your early years, in my opinion, and correct me if you're wrong, if you see this or you use this when you're a mentor, is finding that person's truth and that person's true north, and like what is it that works best for them, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think you have to find, especially when you're younger and entering the industry, like who are you at your core. And how do you uniquely approach the world? So I met a bunch of like students today who just look at problems in a way that I don't, and they already have it. And what I try to impart on them is like hone that, like just as much as you're using your programs and your Photoshops, your illustrators and stuff like that, and you're looking at what's happening in the industry, as a copywriter, what are headlines that I like that are interesting and make me laugh and that I want to emulate one day. As much as you do that, hone how you solve a problem. So if you come at an idea in one way, and you think about things in a different way. So for instance, you have a brief and you always think of an idea that even though it's for potentially one channel, you think of it from an omni-channel lens where it's like this idea could actually work on your phone. It works when you're on the subway. It works, augmented reality. There's a VR experience or whatever. If your ideas extend and that's how you solve problems, that's unique. And you shouldn't, just because you're being asked to produce a print ad or a TV spot or whatever, doesn't mean you should turn that off. It probably means you should find an environment that allows you to harness your natural gifts, right? Versus conforming to places that you think are right for your, that the industry tells you is great, or that you look up to. Find a place where your gifts sort of flourish, and that's what Rapp has done for me. Especially since I've been back, it's really a place where my gifts can flourish, and
what's the best one?
The best one,
well, and best defined by productive. Constructive.
Productive and constructive. I really think it's...
What's the gift that gives the most?
I think for me, it's honestly been, this is going to be a little tactical, but manifestos. So
you're a writer's writer.
I'm a writer's writer. So like I have a formula for manifestos, and I'm actually developing something I'm calling the Manifesto School. And so it's basically a presentation that gives writers the shortcut to...
Yeah, let me know if you need help with that.
I will.
Because that's my wheelhouse.
That is, okay, perfect. I want to run it by you.
Personal. I'm not sure I've even taught it.
Oh, really?
But I exercise it, like now, in my freelance. This is what I start with.
Gotcha, yeah. And it's something that...
And sometimes it doesn't see the light of day, but it sees the light of your screen.
It does. And especially when you're pitching and bringing in big ideas. We actually, at our agency, we have a client where we bring them a new idea every quarter, and that idea is set up with the manifesto. So it's an idea that's outside of sort of our business as usual work that we bring. It's like, hey, we kind of been kicking this around, and here you go. Here's this idea, but we set it up with the manifesto. And so for me, it's not just the manifesto is the vehicle for which I deliver this, but I'm able to, as a writer, really engender empathy, and then figure out how a brand intersects with that authentically.
What does that mean? Engender
empathy.
You have the empathy, or who has the empathy?
I create the empathy. So I put you in our audience's shoes, and then at that point, I've got you hooked, right? I've got you eating out of the palm of my hand,
nice.
And as the brand, then I can come in and solve that person's problem. And so that's what I think I've been best at, and what I try to do, even when I'm writing copy for like a print ad or an email or a banner ad, I'm able to engender the empathy. So get you in the person's shoes and then bring the brand in an authentic way.
It's pre-sold.
That
at that point
it's pre-sold. Yeah, exactly. And so I'm able to do that. And that's always been something in those manifestos where I was just natural at writing. I would crank them out when I was younger. That was my quote unquote big break at Rapp the first time we did we were doing this internal project, and they put the whole creative team on it. It was our global chief creative officer came in town, and our office got chose to do it. And I wrote 3 manifestos, and everybody was like, "What the hell? Like this intern kid wrote this." And since then, it was because I like just had a natural gift for identifying, expressing truth. Yeah, that's it. That's perfect. Expressing truth. And so while the idea that my team came up with didn't necessarily get picked, that led to me going full time from an internship. I think I sealed it that day. And they're like, "Yeah, Kevin's good. We love him. He's a great guy. But can he actually like craft and write and stuff like that?" Mm-hmm. And so that was it. And so I was like, "Man, I think I got something here." And so now our pitches.
Wait, hold on. So you were out of school. How long? Were you an intern at Rapp? So you were out of school for how long?
I was out of school for this would have been 6 months. So I went to the Marcus Graham Project.
How long was
right
that?
After school? That was 10 weeks.
10 weeks. Okay.
And then through that program, I met people at Rapp and got an internship at Rapp.
The reason I interrupted there because like growth is a process, right?
Absolutely.
Growth doesn't happen like
absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
There's a writer here in school who will know that I'm talking about them when I mentioned what our conversation was.
Yeah.
Who showed me some copy, and I think that this writer always had it in them.
Yeah.
It is fucking so good.
Yeah.
And it was like, wow, that's all I needed to see to know you will have a career doing this, whether you believe it or not. And this particular student suffers terribly from like lack of confidence.
Yeah.
Because either conforming or doing what they think is right or whatever. And it was the same moment for you. It's like this moment where the light around this person now is a little brighter in my eye. And I'm not the judge. I'm not God. I'm not making decisions.
Right.
I just see it now the same way it was shown to you. And this is not an early quarter student. This is someone who's basically growing into their own voice.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And so that, for me, that was my breakthrough. And that was when I knew like, oh, this is my gift, like expressing the truth. And now I have language for it. You just gave me kind of the language for it was expressing the truth. And so
can I say something?
Go for it.
Both of those words are critical too.
Yeah.
Because number one is identifying and understanding the truth. The other one is the expression. So you can't have one without the other, but either one of those without the other doesn't make you a writer.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You can write all day with that's not a truth. You're not an advertising writer, and you can identify a truth. If you can't write it, it's worthless.
Exactly. Yeah. And somehow I'm able to write the words to where like other people could take a crack at it, but somehow I'm able to string the words together in a way that gets it right. And so to me, I would say for anyone out there, you have a unique gift in this industry that is completely and 100% needed and valued, and look for environments and workplaces that allow those gifts to be uncovered, honestly, because they're all sort of hidden within us and they come out at certain points. For me, it was that moment. I had a moment like that even in school or in the Marcus Graham Project, but that was like, oh, everything I've learned up to this point has culminated in this moment, and I got it. And so that'll happen for every person, especially younger. When you're in school or your first internship or your first job, you will have sort of this moment that feels like, oh, I got it. And that's it. And you have to I want people to recognize that and take advantage of it. Don't brush it off. It is a real thing. And that put me on a different trajectory.
Interesting.
That. Yeah.
So listeners, we may or may not keep this part because I'm going way off.
Go for it.
I'm going way off script with this. So if I cut any of the following, you won't know.
Okay.
I'm talking to the listeners now.
Okay.
So I want to ask you to help me do my job with 2 questions that I've gotten recently.
Okay.
Because you seem like a smart guy.
Yeah.
Number one, someone asked me recently in the hall, which is not the place to catch me, by the way. I'm confused. What's the difference between strategy and a concept? That was the question.
Okay.
And I had an answer, but like, how is a concept? What's the difference?
Yeah.
How is a strategy not a concept? I guess is what they were asking too. So like, what's the difference?
Yeah.
Can you answer that?
Yeah. Let me try. I think so. First, one feeds the other, so they can't be the same, right? So you need a strategy to create a concept.
First of all, and how do you define a strategy too?
To me, a strategy is it's based in a human truth that is backed by some sort of data or research, or and when I say data, it could be like an actual number, or it could be a cultural observation,
Very,
right?
very well stated.
So it is some sort of cultural observation data point that leads to an insight, which is a human truth about culture or people that hasn't been discovered before.
Mm-hmm.
And the haven't been discovered before is the key part,
Mm-hmm.
because that, if you can do that and you can kind of think about something and create a strategy that seizes on something that no one's ever thought of before, that's literally creativity. It's something that hasn't been done before, right? And so if you can seize on that, that becomes your strategy. Then you use that strategy as a launch pad to create, to brainstorm, to come up with a concept. And to me, a concept is is a creative expression, so a visual and verbal expression that is based in a strategy,
Mm-hmm.
and is determined.
It's how you say it.
It's how you say it, how you show and bring that strategy to life. But and that's the old adage, like when you do work, your strategy is showing.
Yeah. Yeah.
If your work is too on the nose and you haven't taken that visual and verbal far enough, and you're staying too close to the strategy, then your work will feel like strategy.
Yeah.
And that can't happen. Like a strategy should feed you and should lead you down a path that no one's ever gone down before.
That's great.
And that, to me, that's what strategy does. And then once you've gone down that path, the concept is almost the destination. It's the house that you build, or it's the skyscraper you build. Whereas the strategy is the blueprint.
Right, and it's the sketch of the building, and then the execution is like which windows and paint job.
Exactly.
So you did this great thing with these 20 headlines. For about a year and a half, every day I had a blog called Headline a Day blog, which is basically inspirational thoughts about the creative process. And one of those quotes was that a writer or a creative's job is to make someone feel the strategy without recognizing that they just read the strategy or read a line about it. Here's the other challenge I had. This one's harder.
Okay.
So
let's go.
Hey, listeners, the second question that I asked Kevin, as you can tell, I'm recording this separately afterwards. The second question that I asked Kevin came out awkwardly, and I would just want to rephrase the question because his answer was really great. So one of the ongoing challenges that kind of never goes away in my role as department head of the Creative Circus is students come to me probably once a quarter just discussing how they can best work with partners. Sometimes they have partners that decide on their own they don't want to work on a project. Some partners don't see eye to eye with their partners, and sometimes due to the way classes are scheduled and arranged, art directors have to work with another art director, copywriters have to work with another copywriter, and sometimes there are actually teams of 3. So it's kind of a universal challenge. It's something that I do talk about a lot in my Intro to Teams class, but it never really goes away. And the thing that I discussed with him was how partners can best manage expectations at the beginning of a project. And I really wanted to get his take on just the partnership dynamic. So here's his answer.
I would almost say, okay, I know it's going to sound weird, but when you brainstorm, I want you to not think of your roles.
Absolutely.
I want you to function outside of your roles. So don't worry about being a writer. Art director, don't worry about being an art director. Just be people talking about a brief. And
definitely,
I would almost even have them switch roles. Sure. So like art directors, give me like throw in some lines, art director sketch or writer sketch something, and have them kind of function outside their roles. And then really like for teams, like you will. Not everyone gets to choose their partner. I think there's a lot of partnerships out there to where people went to school together, they entered the industry together, and they worked together for a long time. Most times you aren't going to be able to choose your partner, right? So it's and this is a question that I ask when I interview people. It's like, tell me how you approach working it as with a partner who you don't know. It's like an arranged marriage, right? How do you deal with that and find happiness in that sort of scenario? And so what I like to hear, and the people that I've hired who have answered this question correctly have said, yeah, I mean, I would ask them sort of how they like to operate and figure out, like you said, setting expectations is really what it's all about. based on that answer, I'll figure out, okay, what makes sense with how I approach things, and then where do I see where there may be some disagreements, but like having those conversations up front and being transparent, and really, that should start at the beginning of every, maybe not even every project, but every partnership. When you're going to be working with someone for a while, have that conversation. How do you like to brainstorm? Because some people, they like to come to the brainstorm with stuff already going.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And some people might interpret that as, well, they think they have the solve.
Yeah, you're cramming sit down to, yeah.
Exactly. But that may be, I just literally need to get my brain going, or else we're going to be sitting here in this brainstorm for an hour and I'm going to be silent.
I think that's awesome.
So figuring out how people like to work and then how you best complement that.
Right.
I think is the key, because it should be everyone who works at a place is good. And
right.
what makes or breaks partnerships is how people work together. And so if you can get a sense of someone's style of working and way of working and figure out how you complement that, and again, I'm not saying suppress elements of your personality to work with someone, but like how does what you do complement what I do? Right. And if we talk about that and not just naturally expect it to happen, finding that complementary aspects of each other works. Because in every great partnership, like I complete your sentences. I make up where you lack, that kind of thing. Like my partner, Nick Clymer, like he is the energy and the passion and the verve in our partnership. And then I'm the steady, calm, that kind of thing. And so we complement each other that way. And so you can't have one without the other, and we complement each other perfectly. And so but I think that's been it's come from us observing each other and our behavior. And so now that we know that, okay, I know that Nick's going to come in and he's going to be super passionate about this thing. And it may rub some people the wrong way. But what I need to do is, like I was saying earlier, be a diplomat, emphasize that diplomacy part of it. And he may come in passionate and rub some people the wrong way. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to repeat his message in my way, in my diplomatic, calm way. And I'll get people to buy his vision, and I'm going to have his back, and not allow him to sacrifice any of the passion that makes him a great creative. Right. So that's sort of how we work.
It's great.
And it's not, and I'm not saying he's like a fly off the handle type of guy. No, he believes in the ideas and he believes in the direction that we're going. And what I'm here to do is help support him in that. And if it ever goes left or ever goes a bad direction, I'm there with my with my personality to help him out. So.
Yeah, that's great. This is part of what you learn in school is the interpersonal dynamic, because you're so connected to your work. Yeah. You're so identified by your ideas that it gets kind of sticky, and I don't want it to be that way. So
well, and I would piggyback on that, because even just me naming my partner, my boss, Nick, was a little bit vulnerable for me, but I know that there's something that someone can learn from it. And that's why I told the kids today, like, even though you're a student, get a mentee, mentor someone.
It's huge.
Yeah, advice. It's huge. Like, because management and leadership is about helping people solve problems. And guess what? That's what mentorship is. Exactly. And so the earlier you become a mentor, the more you start to build those muscles, and your struggles can become someone else's turning point. If we repeat the same mistakes, we've failed, right? Like as leaders and even just as creatives, like there's stuff to be learned. Every piece of feedback you get it's literally something for you to learn from, and you can take that learning exponential by passing it backwards to someone coming up behind you. And so I think that's what the school is for. This podcast is for. This my work, the work that I do with Marcus Graham Project and Add Color is for. It's like, I've stumbled and I've scraped my knee, so I'm going to help you avoid that rock I tripped over, right? You know what I'm saying? Like that's literally what it is. And it sounds simple, but people don't do it. They just kind of internalize things and try to keep it to themselves. But like, there's so much to be learned, even from your failure. Probably more to be learned from failure than your success.
So much more.
So
that's so great.
Yeah.
So you and I have a lot in common. So we're both Southern. We both have dads who sold insurance, and we both wore suits inappropriately early in our career to an event.
Yeah, wow. Yeah,
we both like to write manifestos.
We do. Yep.
So thank you so much for talking. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is an honor to be here. Really enjoyed the conversation with you and all the students today, and I was doing great work here.
I appreciate that so much. Listeners, you can reach Kevin at kgreenwriter at gmail.com. That's the free Google Mail service. You can also reach him on the social media platforms at kev_green. And you can reach me, as always, at Dance Podcast. I gave you all that stuff at the top of the episode. Dance Podcast at mac.com is my electronic mail. Thank you, listeners, so much for listening. Kevin, again, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Listeners, see you again soon. Bye.